Hey guys, Randy here, and today we are going to be reading a letter from someone inside the WGA. All right, so today I am going to do something kind of unique. I'm going to have a video here that I'm going to put on both my Rec Films Montana channel and also on my Rec Thoughts channel. And those of you that are on my Rec Thoughts channel, you probably already know that I run a film channel, but here on the Rec Films Montana channel, you probably don't know that I run a second channel. I don't do a lot on it, really. It's just kind of a channel that I throw a commentary on once in a while, and I'll discuss some political stuff and some review stuff, but mostly I kind of did that to keep it separate from my film stuff. But this here, I thought that I would put on both places because it applies in both ways. And what I've done here, or what I've found here, is a letter that was given to Film Threat. And Film Threat is a small company that was founded and run by Chris Gore. And if you don't know who he is, you can look him up. He's run Film Threat magazine years ago, and then that eventually turned into the Film Threat website. And he's done a lot of stuff with, film punditry and a lot of news, information, and film. He's also done some documentaries, and he's had his hands in the business. So he's been in the business for several years, and he's got a lot of friends on the inside. Well, recently, somebody wrote a letter to them that is a member of the WGA, and one of the things that they addressed is this whole DEI initiative that's very prevalent inside of Hollywood and very big and influencing on what the writers themselves are allowed to do, write about, and also even down to the hiring practices when it comes to the WGA, and just kind of shows just how kind of corrupt this system has gotten. And so this person, although wrote anonymously, really leaked out a lot of information. To be honest, doesn't surprise someone like me and people that are kind of in the circles that I follow. We're not surprised by this, but a lot of your normal people, when people like me talk and we talk about this DEI, we talk about, a lot of the message that's put in a lot of films today. A lot of their eyes kind of glaze over because they think I'm just talking about some deep philosophical nonsense that doesn't affect them. But really it does. And this is kind of really going to show, kind of the corruptness of the film industry and how this agenda of delivering, their narrative, their message that isn't plot driven, really has really infected the industry. So I'm going to read this letter today. So it might take me a minute, and I apologize, and I'm not very good at this sort of thing, and I may not be the most interesting to listen to, but I'm going to give it a shot because I really hope that information like this could be enlightening to some people who don't pay attention all the time. So anyway, all right, so we'll bring this article up. It's from Film Threat, as you can see, and it's was submitted on, well, it's written. This article was written on January 12th of this year, so really just a few days ago from the point this video is being recorded. They wrote in anonymously, and you can see the headline, "A Veteran Screenwriter's Plot Twist on Hollywood's DEI Cultural Shift." All right, so an open letter from a white writer to the film and TV business. For the last 20 years, I've been a working professional screenwriter. Between 2004 and 2018, I was sent on hundreds of meetings with some of the best studio executives, producers, and directors in the business. I loved it. It was an opportunity to chat with like-minded people who love film, grew up with movies, and were making them at the highest level. We discuss ideas, plot, characters, and their arcs, and who's the audience. maybe chat about subtext and themes. It felt like an episode of Jon Favreau's Dinner for Five. Sometimes you would end up getting work, other times you just made great connections. Everyone was intelligent, film and TV savvy, and had a deep understanding of the business side of the industry. In 2019, things started to change, and quickly. And you can see here there's some screenshots of some things that this person shared about basically check boxes. So we'll kind of get to that. WGA Perspective Writers Search Form Part 1. Suddenly, subtext and themes became the main point of discussing a project or IP. The first question every meeting became, what can we say with this project, or what can we teach people with this story? Plot, character, and audience were now secondary and sometimes not even discussed. These new execs weren't savvy and business-minded execs. They were young, with no track record or comprehension of the bottom line. When the streaming war started and the money hose was turned on, those experienced executives started relying on these young guns to pick up the slack. But the kids were less focused on the hero's journey and more concerned with taking down the patriarchy. Again, remember, this is coming from a writer inside the WGA. Which leads us to the next point. The reality is that for the past 5 years, white, straight male writers and directors with experience and successful track records have been sidelined. We talk about it over coffee and after screenings. We've essentially been told that because of our race and gender, we need not apply. At one point, my agent told me that they couldn't put me up for any OWA's open writing assignments or TV staffing jobs because the execs only wanted to hear takes on the material from BIPOC or female or LGBTQ writers. Very diverse. Some shows even started instituting staffing quotas that 40 to 50% of the writing staff had to be people of color. Now, just take a note there. Nothing in there says that they had to be qualified, right? And I think that's an important distinction. It says that 40 to 50% of the writing staff just had to be people of color. No other criteria, apparently. Let's continue. I know many showrunners who hate this, not because they didn't want to hire new writers and foster them. They didn't want half their staff coming from a pool of young, inexperienced writers who knew nothing about working in a writer's room, production, post, or deadlines. Notice how this writer, this person, is saying that they're not against the hiring of these, diverse people, as it's called, based on any kind of bigotry or bias of that. They're against them being hired if they're not qualified. And that's what he's saying in this. That's what he's qualifying in this last paragraph that we wrote. Is this illegal? Probably, but hey, I'm not an attorney. And there's no way to find out anyway, because if you ask any questions about this, you'll be labeled a racist or called out for your white male privilege. If you so much as raise an eyebrow, there's a risk you'll never work again. Why this is anonymous. See, this may not be obvious at first glance. There sure seem to be a lot of white dudes at the Golden Globes, right? Well, this doesn't impact the top 2% of writers, showrunners, and directors, since they're in the rarefied air where they get to work no matter what. It's those of us with decades of experience working on some of your favorite TV shows and films that are now sitting on the sidelines, waiting. No institution reinforces this more than the WGA. One glance at their monthly calendar of events shows a Latinx writers, Latinx or Latinx, however you want to say it, writers committee meeting, an LGBTQ plus writers committee meeting. Boy, I have a hard time with that. Sorry. A committee meeting of Black writers meeting, a Middle Eastern writers committee meeting, a women's writers committee meeting, and an Asian American writers committee meeting, to just name a few. And again, we've got more screenshots of some of the forms that they are asked to fill out. That's one of the things that kind of leaked with this letter, was attached to this letter, was this person showed things that as writers, they're being asked to fill these things out. Can you imagine if there was a white writers committee meeting? We might be murdered. I didn't say that. He did. Or she did. I'm not sure. And the saddest part of this is that most of the people who would fill that room are some of the most liberal people I know. People who have gone out of their way to foster new and unique voices. See, isn't that kind of interesting? What this person's saying is that it doesn't mean that you're like conservative or right-leaning or some alt-right person because you want people to be hired on the basis of merit. He's talking about even liberal people that are, if I understand it correctly, wanting to have the most qualified people there. Check out the WGA's own 2022 Inclusion and Equity Report and make your own conclusion on the WGA's priorities on this. When creating a writer's profile on the WGA website, there is one box to check if you are heterosexual. Remember that. 3 choices under transgender and 6 under LGBTQ. Not sure what those statistics have to do with writing a great episode of The Witcher. I would tend to agree. This mindset was very present at the last in-house WGA meeting held before the strike of 2023. Every 3 years before we have a new deal with the studios, the negotiating committee sits on a stage and members throw their complaints at them. And God bless them. They sit there for hours on end listening to a bunch of writers bitch and moan like I'm doing, the writer. The complaints at these meetings over the last 2 decades are always the same. How do we get more money and more residuals? In 2023, the meeting had a decidedly different tone. Very few complaints had to do with money this time around. There was a litany of complaints about not enough diversity in the ranks. Young writers asking, how come I've worked for 2 years as a TV writer and I'm not a showrunner yet? A position that should take at least a decade of experience, if not 2, to reach. See, that's a very important point there. I want to pause on that because that again goes back to not focusing on the merits of experience and creativity. I would add that to it in the film industry. It's and it also kind of speaks to this idea that you're entitled because I put in a couple of years, so I'm entitled to move up. Do you not realize if you want this as a career, you need to work at it, you need to get good at it, you need to be passionate about it, not just be handed a trophy or a position. All right, so let's continue. How do we make sure that the guild will fight for staffing requirements? I always thought that to survive in a business, it's a yearly, monthly, daily hustle. There are no guarantees, especially when it comes to staffing a TV show. What I took away from that night is that these young Turks think working in film and TV is just a fun thing that anyone can do. And they can use this opportunity to put their stamp on the world. Can you blame them? It was easy to get here, especially when talent takes a back seat to fitting a quota. Why worry? The showrunner and their number one, the most experienced writer, producer outside the showrunner, will pick up the slack and more than likely finish your inspired work. They can't complain about that episode you turned in late or didn't turn in at all. Or they'll be called a racist or a bigot or something else when they get a call from HR. It's just easier to shut up and run cover for these kids who aren't ready for the big time. That's a lot there. That's a lot to break down. Too much for me right now. The blame for this mess is threefold. Young creative execs with no understanding of the business or what audiences want gained too much influence during the streaming wars. Let's see. They also took it upon themselves to lead the charge in reinterpreting IP, changing successful comic books, novels, and remakes into projects that had something to say, not to entertain. Why even bother with IP if you don't respect the source material? I'm going to stop there again because we have really seen that come to head over the last few years. I mean, you look at Star Wars, Indiana Jones, a lot of Marvel. The list goes on with these big IPs that are, that have any kind of remake, and almost any kind of remake or reboot, or Star Trek as well, that they no longer look at the original source material and go, I want to honor that. I want to stay with that and honor it. They don't do that anymore. It's about what can I say? What stamp can I put on this that's more important than the actual material itself? So that's huge. All right. The WGA followed their lead and threw a huge part of their own membership under the bus in a race to bring in new members. And lastly, this new class of writers who weren't ready to step up to the plate, worked on a lot of product that the general public didn't want to see and didn't relate to. What happens next is anyone's guess. TV is contradicting. There were 600 TV shows in the last year, and now there are only going to be, from what I hear, 300. When it comes to film, there are even fewer jobs than ever. If we don't get back to telling great stories and making profitable shows and movies, with AI right around the corner, the business may never recover. So let's start having those old school meetings again, the ones where you talk about story and characters and what the audience wants. And let's go back to hiring the best writers, the ones with the skill set and creativity. I would agree with this. And not just the one with the right skin color or sexual preference. I won't read that last part here. That's where it ends. But the last part says, if you're a WGA member who would like to share your story on or off the record, you can contact us, meaning Film Threat. You can contact them. So, yeah, I mean, that's a very enlightening, article. I should go back to this because I think that, again, we bring these things up. This person leaked, look at all these check marks. As a writer, see, again, it says down here, the WGA Prospective Writer Search Form. That's part 3. And it's asking to fill out all these check boxes. And it's just ridiculous. None of this has any bearing on your qualifications to tell a good story. And it's quite obvious by the amount of these things that are in these forms that they got to check on now, or they got to fill out, that's the priority. So it's crazy, guys. It's crazy. So, what do we do about this? Well, 2 things. Pay attention. I think pay attention is a big thing if you're not already. I know that for normies it's kind of difficult. And, like I said before, when I talk about it, people's eyes kind of gloss over and think that I'm just being too picky or whatever. I'm overthinking it. No, these messages are in films, and they're constantly influencing, us as people without us even knowing it. I've seen this time and time again. But I mean, here you have from a WGA writer that they're tired of it. They're speaking out, and this is a good thing. I'm glad they're speaking out. Something else that we could do as well is there are places you can seek out. You can seek out different kinds of content. I'll go back to Film Threat here. See, Film Threat, they do a lot of reviews of mainstream movies, but they also do a lot of reviews of independent film. And I think that now more than ever, we really need to support independent film. And I know I have my personal bias in that because I do my own independent filmmaking on Rec Films Montana. And full disclosure, I've teamed up with Epicverse, and so I'm doing a lot of the majority of their short film editing right now. But I really want to support what they're doing. So go check them out. I think that finding places to seek out, this content is important because, and I, and I get it can be overwhelming as a normie trying to find content. We're kind of used to just being fed by the algorithm. Um, and another place you could go is this critic list. I like critic lists because you can think of this site as sort of the audience score of Rotten Tomatoes, not the critic score. This is the audience. It's almost like the audience score. These are normal people that can log on, make an account, and they can watch a movie and give their honest opinion. And kind of speaking to what this WGA writer was saying. What's kind of cool about critic list, it goes in line with that, is like down here you look at themes, language, violence, nudity, political bias. This is a big one. So like political bias, if you look at a movie, there's a place for these people who rate these movies. They can say, yes, this leans very left. Is it family friendly? Maybe. Uh, that's something that you wouldn't see like on an IMDb or a Rotten Tomatoes. You wouldn't see that kind of a very easily simple, broke down, uh, a breakdown of a rating. So, give Criticless a chance. And if you're not sure where to find a film at, when you go into one, it shows you where to watch it at. Okay, like this is Boy Swallows Universe. Random click. I don't know what this is. It's on Netflix. Okay, cool. So now you know where to look for it. So anyway, I've been rambling on right now. I'll try to stop doing that because I can be kind of annoying. I get it. So what's this all mean? Well, things are coming to a head in the industry. They had their big strike. I know that in 2024, we're going to see a famine when it comes to content because of the strikes, and also a lot of this stuff is losing them a lot of money. There are some companies like Lucasfilm and Disney that don't seem to be learning their lesson. They lost over $1 billion last year on film alone, and they seem to be going and doubling down this year. But a lot of these things are falling apart, and now's the time to support the independent film space. The Bank Key by Daily Wire for their kids content might be something to check out, something more safe for your kids to watch. Anyway, let's hope that eventually this thing resets. We get good content creators, whether it be on YouTube, whether it be in the independent film space. Keep your eye out because things are changing and people are rising up and saying they're done with it. So anyway, that's it for this rant. And until next time, God bless.